This morning's talk, love, hatred, and their effects in your life, is a little heavy. So this is a warning for you. But it's also necessary. Hatred is not something that we normally talk about. It's certainly not something that you sit, in your social circle and talk about. But it is important. And because the teaching brings it up, it just seemed to me that it would be appropriate for us to talk about it this morning. So there'll be a nice balance between love and hatred and the effects, that both of these qualities have in our life. So you ready? You buckled in? Okay. We know what it feels like to live with anger and hatred and alienation. I mean, we do know this. And if you say, no, I don't have an environment filled with hatred, then it means you're not awake. All you have to do is open a magazine, turn on your television set, listen to the 5 o'clock news, and we are bombarded with hatred and anger and alienation. It is increasing in the world today. So don't, put your head in a brown paper bag and say, no, this isn't happening to me, because it is. But we also know what it feels like to be filled with love and friendliness and warmth, and the power that these feelings have to connect us. And I think for the majority of us, because we are, as human beings, we are very gregarious people, we must feel a connection with our friends, with our environment, with the higher worlds, with God, with the Master, with the ashram. Contact is very, very important to our health and our survival. So obviously, we want our environment, particularly our feeling environment, to be filled with love and friendliness and warmth. So I want you to be thinking about, during the talk this morning, what happens if you remove your warmth from your friends, from your family, from the sphere that we call the sphere of compassion. What's going to happen if you remove that action of warmth from the environment? How will it affect you? And here's another point to think about. I truly believe that it is our own life stories that are our greatest teachers in regard to these elements of love and hatred and alienation versus love and friendliness and warmth. When they're with us, when they're removed from us, we learn something very important if we allow ourselves to learn. In other words, they reveal to us what we need to nurture in our hearts and the ill will that we must let go of. To learn from our life lessons is not to ask how we can learn to be compassionate, but how to appreciate that we cannot afford to live without love. So that's the point. How can we afford to live without love? No matter how justified our anger and resentment seems to be, we must open our hearts to love. It is interesting to recognize and to listen to people talk about love. Love is not understood the way it's supposed to be understood. It's not felt the way it's supposed to be felt. We have the term unconditional love, but we don't experience and we don't express unconditional love. We being, humanity, we being our families, we being ourselves. It's very difficult in these days to experience and express unconditional love because life almost seems to be the exact opposite of that reflection. The news is a good resource to prove my point. You look at the millennia children today. You look at the Generation X children today. They're not being given examples of unconditional love. So this is something to really think about. Those of us that are on a spiritual path and on this journey to perfecting love and on this journey to the higher worlds that will only give us entrance into an ashram with a loving heart, then we need to reevaluate ourselves. And we need to begin to think about, where do we remove warmth, that feeling, of contact from our children and from our neighbors and even from our enemies. Because we are in a solar system of love. So how can we deny love? Mahatma Gandhi said, "An eye for an eye is a terrible way to blind the world." There's a Buddhist verse which says, "Hatred never ceases by hatred." Hatred never ceases, it never stops by hatred. But by love alone is healed. This is an ancient and eternal law. This is something maybe you want to write down, so I'm going to repeat it. Put it on your mirror, put it on your refrigerator, something you open up every single day, usually 2, 3, 4 times a day. You're going to open that up, or a cupboard up that you open frequently, so that you can see that. And even though it begins to escape your recognition because of the repetitiveness of opening up those doors, it's still going to go into your unconscious mind, and pretty soon you're going to be practicing it and understanding it. Hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. This is an ancient and eternal law. When Gandhi was asked if he had any message for the world, he said, "My life is my message." So I ask you and I challenge you, what message does your life give? And be very honest with your answer. What message does my life give? What message did Gandhi's life give? What qualities of your being do you bring into the difficult situations in your life? Is it love or is it hatred? What are the effects? Without words, now listen to this carefully. Without words, in what way do you touch your friends, connect with your friends, family, and even strangers? What is the spirit you touch them with, and how are they going to remember you? How do you live and embody the wisdom of the teaching, the love and ethics of the teaching? And where do you not do so? See, this is the path of transformation. We're on this path of transformation. We cannot ask from others what we are not giving in return. And then, because we are conscious spiritual beings, we need to take the step and make it higher for us. If someone dislikes us, if someone attacks us, if someone is trying to destroy us, are we going to retaliate in the same way? Intellectually, you're going to say, no, of course not. But if you monitor yourself, you're going to see sometimes you do retaliate. And then it makes a step, our action, not somebody else's action, but it puts us 2 and 3 and sometimes 4 steps behind. And if this continues to happen throughout our life, we're going to miss the boat or the train. A prophet once came to a city to convert its inhabitants. At first, the people listened to his sermons, but then they gradually drifted away till there was not a single soul to hear the prophet when he spoke. One day a traveler said to him, "Why do you go on preaching?" Said the prophet, "In the beginning, I hoped to change these people. Now, if I still shout, it is only to prevent them from changing me." See, that's very powerful. I wish I could really emphasize this in such a way that it will permanently be impressed in your brain. We cannot continue on a spiritual path and live a life of being an automaton. You cannot walk away from a beautiful talk like this and this afternoon go to Whole Foods Market, let's say, which is a wonderful natural food store in this country, in the U.S., and treat that clerk like dirt. Or make that clerk treat you like you are an entitled person, that you're better, you're more important, you're superior to their service work. Or that waitress, when you go out to lunch, to treat her in a demeaning way. There's no love in that. That's you acting like a jerk. And then you tell people how holy you are, how spiritual you are, that you meditate every day. No, no, no. You're not meditating every day if you are treating people in that way. The next area that's so difficult, and I guarantee you will be tested over and over and over again with this because you are on the path of transformation. People who really, really dislike you are going to begin to voice their dislike towards you. And how are you going to behave? Are you going to retaliate and justify your action? Or are you going to pull yourself in, stay balanced, and begin to think how you can handle this situation without retaliation, with understanding, with love, with forgiveness, and with time? Give it time. Because that person that dislikes you so much is not going to love you overnight. And you're going to find over the course of time, it's not important if that person loves you or not. What is important is if you can love them in all your unconditional ability to love. And you're going to be a much healthier person, I guarantee it. On all levels, physical, emotional, mental. So just expect these tests to come to see how sincere you are, in being on a spiritual path. A young man was living in a monastery. And there was a very rich but stingy man who would come to the meetings. So we have a young man living in the monastery, and then we have a stingy man who comes to the meetings. The young man's teacher told him one time to come to the meeting after 10:30. He did. When the rich man came, there was no place to sit, and no one was getting up to offer him a chair. Then the teacher asked, "Do you like this situation?" "No, I do not like this situation because I had to stand through the whole lecture." The teacher said, "Write a check then so that we can build a new temple." Hatred is not a popular subject, so it is rarely talked about, as I said earlier. But if you really think about hatred and do some research on it, you're going to see that hatred is a source of every kind of disease. Physical disease, emotional disease, mental diseases, whether it is from this lifetime or previous incarnations. The teaching is telling us that hatred is a source of every kind of disease. I think it's important for us to teach our family and our friends and our children what hatred does to humanity and what it is doing, so that from the beginning our children can stop the source of their future sicknesses and pain and suffering. From the teaching, it says, irritation is the result of hatred. Now we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. Irritation poisons our whole nervous system, and it prevents our mechanism from receiving the creative and constructive energies of life. When you are hateful, slowly, your nerves develop a poison called imperil, the poison of irritation. Now let me stop just a minute, because this was something I was thinking about this morning and wanted to be sure to put in the talk. Most of us do not see ourselves as people who hate. And we're going to pretty much reject the idea that others may hate us, right? I mean, if you really think about it, how many people can you count on your hands, or your fingers, hands? I only have 2 of them. Huh? Anyway, but I do have 2 fingers, 10 fingers, thank God. All honestly, I don't think I could find 10 people that I would say hate me. So let's go down to the first step of the ladder of hatred, and it starts with dislike. See, then for me, it comes more in perspective. So the dislike begins to increase and increase and increase until at some point it may become, a stage of hatred toward you, or you toward that other person. So now maybe you can keep your minds open a little bit and say, well, this may include me. Okay, it just might. Okay. So, imperil, the poison of irritation. This poison slowly penetrates into our nervous system, and wherever that poison accumulates itself, the corresponding part of the nervous system will not receive life energies or your psychic energies. Slowly, you partially paralyze yourself here and there. Eventually, your immune system weakens, and you cannot resist the germs and the microbes and the viruses attacking your system. Hatred or dislike accumulates in our system, our whole human mechanism. It also accumulates in the brain. It accumulates in our heart, and especially in the vagus nerve that controls the stomach and the heart. So these are, I'm just throwing out some ideas here that you can research. You can, and I did this myself, to research on the internet and Google and Chrome and all the other, search engines you want to try on the internet, and do your due diligence researching the vagus nerve and what it controls. And you're going to find in scientific sites, health sites, that the vagus nerve controls your digestion, your stomach, and your heart. Irritation from the hatred starts to destroy your bodily functions. So you may say, see, this is why I wanted to bring in the word dislike. But how could this be? If this is happening to me, I don't have any hatred. But I know you have dislike. Here's something that may surprise you. The teaching tells us that hatred is not an emotion. It is a dark entity. So if we can use our imagination a little bit and take the idea or the action of dislike and see how the process of dislike will intensify and intensify and intensify, what is happening, the darkness in that thought form of hatred attracts dark entities and intensify the dislike. See? And we let it happen. We just let it enter into us because we justify those that are disliking us or those that hate us. We justify and we retaliate in the same way that they're behaving toward us. If you can see how hateful people look clairvoyantly, you would be horrified. The darkness enters into the person's heart and brain and controls them. It is like the many heads of a hydra or the legs of an octopus that works around the planet, known as the Dark Lodge or the dark forces. Their intention is to stop the evolution of humanity. To stop the evolution of humanity, the Black Lodge creates hatred among families, peers, co-workers, and between nations and in humanity. It wants people to devour each other through hatred and devour themselves, and to prevent their evolution, spiritual expansion, service, beauty, and creativity. See, I told you this is going to be a heavy talk, but I think it is necessary. And if we're strong enough and honest enough, we're going to see how this is going to change our consciousness to understanding the process of where dislike can lead to hatred, and that it is a dark entity. This presents such an ugly image, and I know that, and I apologize for it. And you can just turn off the YouTube right now if you want to. But I have a lovely story now to share. Okay. Hanging on, this is a story. This is a story about a young man that was being carried away by the currents of the ocean. Hanging on to my board, he said, as I drifted, I could feel the power of the current dragging me further and further away from shore. I started to get colder and colder and more tired. I also began to feel afraid as I realized that no one had spotted me. I don't know how long I drifted. I felt as if I could hardly hang on any longer. But I knew that if I let go of my board, I was finished. I hadn't prayed for years, but I began to pray now. Someone, anyone, please help me. I don't want to drown. I don't want to die alone. Suddenly, my board was bumped hard and hard again. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see anything I could be hitting, but the bumps kept coming, pushing me ever so slowly toward the shore. The thoughts of shark hit me, but then I realized there were no sharks in these waters. Beside me, first a fin, and then a head broke through the surface. It was the eye of a dolphin. It sank beneath the water again and continued with its slow and steady bumping. I could see the shoreline getting closer. All I needed to do was to hold on. I could hear the shouts as the rescue crew spotted me, and I could feel this steady, sure pressure beneath me as the dolphin continued to guide me in. When the boat reached me and the crew pulled me out of the water, I felt so many different feelings. Exhaustion, yes, but incredible exhilaration. I learned from that day a lot, but the powerful lesson I learned about was that unconditional love can come from many sources. Well, that's another but opposite image. That of a dolphin that is saving a drowning man. So which images attract us? Love or hatred? More than perhaps any other human need, more than food and shelter, we need to connect with one another. We need to stay in contact and acknowledge our interdependence and love in order to live a sacred spiritual way. Think of the times you have deeply connected with another person and what that meant to you. Of the times of difficulty when you allowed another person to help you. It is not with our righteousness or our ideas that we solve the ills of the world, but with the power of our love. By seeing through the veils of our life stories, through our daily dramas, we come to know one another's pain and sorrow. I couldn't help but think of the young woman that was killed, that was born in Prescott, Kayla. And how many people turned out for her memorial service, that didn't know her. But even in her death, her story, and let me go back I don't want to paraphrase this, if I can find it. What message does your life give? What message did her life give? She didn't live her life for herself. She lived her life for others, to try to meet the needs of those that were in pain and suffering. She was a martyr. She was an initiate. Don't see her as a young girl that died tragically. Look beyond that and see what a great soul this girl was, this young girl. By seeing through the veils of our life stories, through our daily dramas, we come to know one another's pain and sorrow. It is when we dip ourselves into the pains and sorrows of others that our hearts open and the petals of our centers radiate out to others with love and caring. Here's an Indian tale. A brother asked the old man, Matau, "What shall I do? My tongue causes me trouble, and whenever I am among people, I cannot control it, and I condemn them with my hatred in all their good deeds, and also contradict them. What therefore shall I do?" The old man, Matau, answered him, "If you cannot control yourself, your hatred, go away from people and live alone. For this is a weakness. Those who live together with others ought not to be square but round, in order to turn toward all." Further, the old man said, "I live alone, not because of my virtue, but rather because of my weakness. You see, those who live among people are the strong ones." Love is not for cowards. It is not a weakness, but a great strength. At times, in our own pain and difficulty, we may feel unable to find enough love to hold even ourselves, never mind others. Yet life continues to present us with countless moments that call for us to find greater and greater depths of love, of compassion. The love that is needed can come from unexpected sources, from the wind or from the animals, or as in the dolphin story. Or we may lose our connection with it in our busyness, ambition, or pride, only to find it again after we stumble and reconnect with the life. It is always a very simple touch and very touching of those around us that have kindness. It's like seeing them for the last moment, forgiving what has disappointed us, and loving fully. It's interesting to think about, and I think we're all, generally we're like this. I don't want to be specific or overgeneralize things, but you know, we go through our day-to-day life half the time unconsciously. You know, we have our routines, we have our habits. Oftentimes we're struggling, you know, with various situations in our life. And what's happening during these times is we are behaving mechanically. We take one another for granted. We expect this and we expect that, and we expect so much from one another without really giving much back. You know, we may see someone every single day, but we don't really show our gratitude and love to that person in special ways. And then that person comes home from the doctor one day and says, "I have 6 weeks to live." All of a sudden, your life changes completely, doesn't it? And all the problems you had with that person melts away. It's not important anymore. It's irrelevant to how you feel about that child or that spouse or that friend or that coworker. Isn't that true? So why not be like that every single day and overlook what you dislike about that person and transform what you dislike in that one by a loving image, a beautiful image, and really treat them with respect, the way that dolphin saved the life of that scared man, and they had no relationship. And that dolphin wasn't going to get paid or rewarded. It was pure love. As I said at the beginning of this morning's Sunday talk, we know what it feels like to live with anger and hatred and dislike and alienation, And we know too what it feels like to be filled with love. Our own experiences on this journey of life are our best teachers. So you see now through these stories and more of the talk being revealed this morning how that is so. They reveal to us these stories, these experiences on our life journey, what we need to nurture in our heart. And the ill will we must let go of. See, it is not someone coming to you, hearing your story, your distress story that says someone is hating me, someone is disliking me, someone is trying to hurt me and to ruin my life. And that person says, so what are you going to do in retaliation? Let's create a plan. Let's create a strategy. We're going to get back at them. Don't listen to people like that. Don't. Because it makes you exactly, perhaps even worse, than the one that is trying to destroy you. The strategy is, how can you be more understanding? Learn about that person. What makes them the way they are? You see the point that I'm trying to make? I don't want to elaborate because we're running out of time, but surely you get the point. See, we're not going to fall into the darkness of hatred. The teaching explains, when you have hatred, something happens that is very interesting. That we have two kinds of mind. We have the abstract and we have the concrete mind. The abstract mind is a source of pure reason. The concrete mind does concrete things, such as writing a letter. But inspiration, logic, and reasoning comes from the higher mind, where the soul lives. When our concrete mind stays alone, we are an automaton, a machine that thinks by the thoughts and by the hypnotic suggestions of other people. Your mind becomes the instrument of your subconscious mind. Your mind becomes an instrument of your subconscious. The subconscious mind is all about the unconscious, accumulated thoughts and actions and events that are collected there like an alphabet soup. They come out and use your concrete mind to make your mind in life a mechanical, automatic life. So, okay, behave that way, but don't tell people that you're in the teaching and that you're an Agni Yoga student, because you will turn people away from the spiritual path. You will have people sell their Agni Yoga studies and books because they don't want to be like you. You're not a good example of a spiritual path if you use only your concrete mind and live a mechanical, automatic life. This is how the crowds, when full of hatred, do things that we learn about in the media. The source of light and love and beauty is blocked by hatred. Irritation separates your centers from your glands. Now, this is a very powerful statement. So this is something for you to think about, to study, and to read. Irritation separates your centers from your glands. We have 7 main centers in our etheric body. And each center has a corresponding ductless gland. What is a ductless gland? A ductless gland is part of the endocrine system. Its energy, its substance goes directly into your bloodstream. The endocrine system, the glands that are part of the endocrine system, which is part of the ductless system, would be like your thyroid gland, your hypothalamus, your adrenals, and those are just 3. These 7 ductless glands have major roles for our health and sanity and happiness and prosperity. In the in the time that is left, let us talk about the heart center. Oh dear. If our heart center is blocked, we do not have love. Even if we talk about it and our actions appear that we are loving human beings, if our heart center is blocked, we do not have love. We do not have compassion. You can be brutal to others. You can be destructive to others. And when that behavior spews forth, that means the petals of your heart are atrophying. If your heart center is really functioning, you are compassionate. You want to serve. You dedicate and to really surrender yourself in sacrificial jobs because your heart center is controlling your life. See, not your concrete mind. All other centers have similar roles and importance. See, like the throat center, like the head center. Hatred destroys the petals of your centers. Your head center has 12 petals. Then the virus of hatred enters into these petals. It eats the petals of your heart center. Your head center. Immediately, when the petals of your head center are eaten by hatred, you do not want to meditate. You do not have logic. You do not have the sense of responsibility, the sense of direction. You stop striving for perfection. You do not have pure reasoning. You do not have intuition. You are cut off from there. When the head center is blocked by the virus of hatred, the corresponding mechanism, which is your brain, starts showing serious signs of tiredness. It becomes lazy. It falls into inertia, and it begins to boost itself using drugs and liquor and different things that messes it up even more. If the heart center is blocked in some sense, in some degree, it affects immediately your physical heart. Our 7 main organs live from energy coming from the centers. If the energy is blocked and the organ does not receive energy from its center, the organ begins to degenerate and deteriorates, and it functions more slowly. I'm almost done. Are you with me? Okay. You can find that all emotions and motives and activities in the world are prompted by hatred. Of course, we know that there are millions of beautiful people who are trying to manifest or transform this planet with love. And we want to be in that stream, that wave of the new humanity. In conclusion, whatever is happening through hatred to your body, the same thing is happening to humanity through hatred. We cannot talk too much about hatred. Think about it. Read about it. Eventually, you will start developing a center within your core and say, I want to love. In 2010, I was in Italy and visited the sanctuary of St. Francis of Assisi. He said, make me an instrument of love and peace, my Lord. You can see the same thing in Christ. When the people shouted and spit in his face, he said, if Father did not give permission, you could not do it. He did not say, I hate you. He said, forgive them, my Lord. This reminds me that the first Sunday in April, we're going to, at the end of the Sunday talk, we're going to have a 10 or 15-minute discussion where if you're on the webinar and in touch with us remotely, you can put your questions out. If you're here physically, you can ask questions, and we're going to have a nice discussion. This, again, would be a wonderful talk to have a really heartfelt discussion.